So the OnePlus 12R is nothing like beyond the aesthetics of the OnePlus 12. So that is a mid-level that is a top-end flagship. This is a mid-level device, but has a lot of the top-level performance. And the focus here isn't on its camera systems. In fact, it's on the user experience and the experience in general. But what separates the 12R from most mid-level smartphones is its specifications actually pretty damn impressive. In fact, let's talk about that. So you get a 6.7-inch AMOLED display with 120 Hz, 1600 nits of peak brightness, 16 gig of RAM, and you get 256 or 512. This is the 512 storage option. 5500 milliamp hour battery with 100 watts of wired charging, and last year's flagship Snapdragon 8 Gen 2. All for the 512 spec. We paid £550, which is insane. It's like $600. Insane value for money when you factor in what this is actually competing against. Now, we mentioned that the focus wasn't on cameras, but let's touch on those cameras. So you've got a 50 megapixel main sensor, 8 megapixel ultra wide, 2 megapixel macro, and then a 16 megapixel front facing camera. Now, the cameras themselves and the output is going to be sort of good, not great. In fact, it takes quite a bit of effort to get a really good shot. But if you're willing to put the effort in and the time in and learn how the camera system behaves and functions, you can get some pretty good shots, to be fair. And overall, our experience with the OnePlus 12R cameras have been good, basically. There's nothing here that sort of stands out that makes you go, oh my god, that's incredible, oh my god, that's really bad. It's just a very solid performer. Rear video is 4K 30 FPS, front video is 1080p 30 FPS. So the 12R, as we said, is focused more on the experience. Now let's talk a bit more about those experiences, starting with Snapdragon 8 Gen 2. So let's talk about the 12R's chipset. So Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, as we said, last year's flagship performer, and it still is an incredibly powerful device. And our chipset is doing wonders in here. Now, the 16 gig of RAM does help, but you kind of only really appreciate the benefits of the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 when it's really being pushed to its best. And that's no better option than two things. One, gaming. Call of Duty on the OnePlus 12R is a very seamless experience. Great FPS, excellent graphics, easy to use. I'm a pretty blah gamer, to be honest. I actually only ever game for the purpose of using phones. I used to be a big gamer, but no longer do. But my experience using the 12R whilst gaming with the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 chipset and that 16 gig of RAM is there was no sort of, like, it didn't get hot at all. The cooling system is excellently well managed. The whole use of the device, the way it feels, the form and function, being able to game on it felt great as well. Well, if gaming's not your thing, then let's talk about video. And video output on the 12R, again, because of that AMOLED display, because of those 1600 nits of peak brightness, it gives you excellent color reproduction, deep blacks, rich colors. This, you could watch content on this all day long and your eyes will not get tired. You won't feel lethargic. And I don't think if you pair them with a pair of earbuds or whatever, or headphones, whatever you fancy, or if you're just watching it in your room because you don't want to doom scroll, the experience itself is excellent. So that chipset is doing wonders. And again, just to touch on it, there was no real thing where the phone felt very warm throughout the gaming or the video experience. It all felt really cool. So the thermal management inside the 8 Gen 2 is excellent, and complementing all of that is that excellent AMOLED display. So let's talk OS on the OnePlus 12R, specifically Oxygen OS 14 and Android 14. Now, Oxygen OS has a lot of heat, I guess, probably the best way to describe it, because it's kind of merged a lot of its elements with Color OS from Oppo, and those companies are essentially in partnership together, so you're going to bleed over one to the other. Our biggest issue, and really our only issue, having used the 12 and the 12R now, in terms of software, has been this really odd feature called the shelf. Essentially, you swipe down from the top, you can activate or not activate it. You swipe down and it's a shortcut essentially to all your notifications, sort of like your widgets and hot apps you want to use, etc. For us, that implementation would have been to swipe down, go to the actual notification menu, and then swipe left or right, and you then get the option to have the shelf there, which would have made more sense, but hey, what can you do? This is running the latest software update as well, so all the photos and videos and everything you see today is running the newest software as well. Now, the OS itself, you get tons of customization options as you'd expect with Android, but generally the main focus of Android OS 14 and Android 14 itself has been its refinements in its software. So whereby we're talking about little bugs, etc. Those have all been fixed to give a better, again, user experience. So when you're using the phone, 8 Gen 2, 120 Hz, 1600 nits of peak brightness, 6.7-inch AMOLED display, all that works, chef's kiss, beautifully. As you'd expect, scrolling, checking emails, reading news, articles, anything you think you'd want to do on your OnePlus device, you can do on here, and it is flawless. No jitters, no slowdowns, nothing. Honestly, in terms of that specification and the general sort of experience that we've had using the 12R, and I guess even the 12, to be honest, has been excellent. It's very, very old school OnePlus, where you're using devices and you think, hey, this feels like £1,000 phone. They both aren't. One's 800, one's 500 if you factor in promotions. So the 12R, when you're using Android OS 14 with Oxygen OS 14, gives you an excellent seamless experience. There are so many customization options, we can't even get into them all, but if you wanted to look at that, then we can comment below, we can post a video on all the customization options available on Oxygen OS 14. The OnePlus 12R. Let's talk compromises, and there are a few. So you get no wireless charging, IP64 rated, not IP67 rated, UFS storage 3.1, not 4.0 as they originally advertised, and the biggest one for us would be that the software updates are 3 years for software, 4 years for security. Now, are those downfalls of the 12R significant enough to put you off that, of what we've said so far, and that price tag? For me, I would say absolutely not. Most people will keep their phones for, say, around 3 years as an absolute peak maximum. The majority of the people who have their phones probably don't even update their software. And that's genuinely true. I've spoken to friends and family, a lot of them are like, oh, the new software updates is fine, I don't care. And they're running a year-old software. They literally don't care, because as long as their phone works and it functions correctly, they're not bothered. So 3 years of software is a bit of a disappointment. You'd like to see that 5 is a minimum, and 4 years for security is good, not great. That should have been 7 potentially. They are lagging behind people like Samsung and Google right now in the Android space, but overall, the OnePlus 12R, we've said a lot in this review, has been about the user experience. And in that sense, if we factor that in and that alone, is a great experience. As we've mentioned multiple times, we talk about Android OS 14 and Oxygen OS 14, the user experience is very much up there with any flagship you could possibly get. You get excellent customization options, tons of features. 120 Hz, for example, is a no-brainer. The peak brightness, everything about the phone, we've never had a single issue with any part of it, to be honest with you. And then the cameras, we kind of highlighted to start this review as being sort of like maybe not the greatest point. They are still very good. In fact, at this price point of $499, they're probably going to be pretty difficult to beat. I would say maybe the Pixel 8, which is about £100 more, is going to be your nearest competitor. The iPhone 15, which would be its other competitor, is sort of way up there, it's about £200 more, so you can't really factor that in because that's closer to the OnePlus 12 price. So overall, our experience of the 12R has been incredibly positive, and I would say it's really nice to see that everything has sort of settled down with OnePlus. They can get the brand out a bit more when it comes to the legal issues that they had with Nokia. That's great, and now we're seeing sort of the fruits of that development, in that the 12 series is old school OnePlus back to its absolute best. Super excited to see what they do for the rest of the year, going into 2025 as well. I know we're looking ahead, but the OnePlus 12R is a no-brainer at $499, even at $599. Thank you so much for watching. Until the next one, as always, we out.